What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the episode of Inside the Lines. I'm your host, Jack Krause. Today we have a jam-packed episode for you guys here today. We have a lot of stories we're going to cover here in today's episode of Inside the Lines, so let's not waste any time and jump right into it. Now, we're starting with our first story stemming still from the incident that took place on Sunday night regarding Kyle Larson. Now, we've heard a lot of people make statements about this. We've heard NASCAR statement, we've heard Chip Ganassi statement, and heard from even a couple drivers like Joey Logano. But there was one person that a lot of us wanted to hear from, and that was Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace being the only black driver in the NASCAR Cup Series. In fact, I think in all top 3 divisions, the only black driver. So it was very vital for him to give his point of view on the situation, and yesterday he did. He wrote a big statement on the situation. We're not going to cover every single sentence, but we're just going to cover a few points he made here, so let's go over. He says, quote, "As much as I didn't want to be involved, I was from the very beginning. This is a part of my background and culture that feels attacked and hurt, and the other part feels confused and angry. Let's start off with the word. It's not just a word. There is a ton of negative meaning behind the word. Doesn't matter if a person uses it in an offensive way or not. The word brings many terrible memories of people and families and brings them back to a time that we as a community and human race have tried our hardest to get away from." He then goes on to talk about the situation that I said in my video a couple days ago and how many people think that NASCAR is racist, as like the community as a whole is just flat out racist. And he goes on to talk about it. He says, quote, "The sport has made combating the stereotype one of their top priorities. NASCAR has been doing what it can to get away from the quote-unquote racist and redneck sport labels. Diversity and inclusion is a main priority for the sport across every team, every car, every crew member, and employee. With that said, it hurts to see the African American community immediately throw NASCAR under the bus with the quote, 'I'm not shocked, it's NASCAR. NASCAR has been and will be way better than how we've been represented in the last couple weeks.'" And then finally, he gets into the conversation regarding Kyle Larson. He had a conversation with him the day or the night of that happened, and the day after. He talks about his conversation with Kyle Larson in his second paragraph. "What Larson said was wrong, whether in private or public. There is no gray area. I saw the incident the night it happened, and within 5 minutes, Kyle texted me. He called me the next morning as well. Finally, I called him back with a FaceTime to talk face to face, and we had a good conversation. His apology was sincere. His emotions and pride were shattered. We discussed why he chose to use that language, and I shared my thoughts. I told him it was too easy for him to use the word, and that he has to do a better job and get it out of his vocabulary. There is no place for that word in this world. I'm not mad at him, and I believe that he, along with most people, deserves second chances, and deserves space to improve. I do wish him and his family nothing but the best, and I'm more than willing to work with him to address diversity and inclusion in our sport." He then goes on to talk about on how, in the third long paragraph, on how being an athlete puts you on a higher pedestal, and you really have to just be careful what you say and what you do. And that because in a situation like NASCAR, when you put on that fire suit, you're not only representing as an ambassador for your sport, you're also representing the sponsors on your fire suit, like with Kyle Larson, McDonald's, Cordova One Bank, Clover, Monster Energy, Chevrolet, Goodyear, and NASCAR. So whenever you do something, it reflects bad on all the partners on your fire suit as well. He then ends off the post saying, quote, "I am a NASCAR member, a damn proud one too. I would expect and should be held to the same standard as any other members of the sport. I think everyone can learn from something from what has happened these past few weeks. I'm looking forward to getting the season back underway and continue our momentum." And yeah, so that was Bubba Wallace's statement, and overall, I really don't have anything else to add on to it because he really hit all the points that I was trying to make. And also, it was good to see him include a personal situation between him and Larson. Shows that Larson really does regret saying that, and really does feel sorry for what has transpired in these past couple days. And yeah, like Bubba said, I hope he gets a second chance, but if he doesn't, at the same time, if he doesn't get a second chance, I can't feel sorry for him because, I mean, he kind of deserved it. So, but he ain't the only driver to post a statement on this. If you guys don't remember, there was a certain driver from the 80s to the early 90s, an African-American driver by the name of Willy T. Ribbs. Now, if you want to learn more about Willy T. Ribbs and his career in racing, which, by the way, he was a really good race car driver, specifically during his time in Trans Am. I think he won like 17 races in Trans Am, nearly won the championship 2 or 3 times, and also won in IMSA, became the first African-American to compete in the Indy 500. It's a great story on Netflix called 𝙏𝙤𝙙𝙖𝙮𝙯. I just watched it last night, and it was really, really good. I really consider you guys check it out after watching this video, but he commented to Racer Magazine regarding the Kyle Larson situation. We're going to read off a couple quotes from him and just gather my thoughts on overall his conversation with Kyle Larson, because he did have a personal chat with Larson as well. Anyways, let's go on. He says, quote, "I just wanted to support him and find out what he's thinking, and we had a good talk. I know what setbacks are like, and they hurt, and I've said some things I regret over the years. But I told him he wasn't OJ, and he didn't kill anybody. He just hurt some feelings, and they can be repaired. I told him it wasn't the end of his career. It's just set back a little bit. I felt for the kid because you could tell it wasn't said with malice. And I don't believe he's a racist, or I wouldn't have called him," said Ribs. "I told him nobody in racing understands the N-word more than I do. And I think it was the first time he's laughed in 3 days. But there is a GA version and there's the deal breaker version. And it was obvious which version this was. I get that the millennials use it a lot nowadays as a term of endearment, and it's slang. But Kyle knows he shouldn't have said it, and I doubt if he ever does again." Now, when asked of if he gave any advice to Kyle Larson, he simply said, quote, "I just told him to keep being a good father and husband, and people will forgive you," he replied. "Kids make mistakes, and all you can do is show atonement. Yes, this is serious, but it's not the end of the world. I don't think he needs to go out into the Afro-American communities or go speak to groups. And I told him that he was welcome to hang out with me some night and we'll drive around in my truck and discuss cultures. Right now, he just needs to take NASCAR's diversity program." And then to end off the statement, he says that Kyle said his parents rented 𝙏𝙤𝙙𝙬𝙏𝙀, the movie I was just talking about, and told him to sit down and don't move. I told him that was a good start. And overall, just my thoughts on it really just tells me that Kyle Larson is really trying to make things right. And I applaud him for that. It's going to be a very, very steep climb if in order for him to get back into NASCAR. And I saw a couple people in the comments on my last video saying, oh, you know, he's going to be back at Stewart-Haas next year, or, you know, he's going to be back in the Cup Series in no time. No. He ain't if he's going to be in the Cup Series, he ain't going to be in the Cup Series for quite some time. I say 3 to 4 years earliest. You know, and that's me being nice. 3 to 4 years. It could be more than likely, it could be longer than that. Because when you're a high-profile driver like Kyle Larson and you say what he said on Sunday, sponsors are very, very iffy. They're going to be, you know, like, they're on thin ice. They're like, more than likely they're not going to want to work with you because they more likely can't trust you. Larson's going to have to be able to enable trust back into these companies if he's going to want to get back into NASCAR's top division, specifically in a top ride. Now on to our next story revolves around Ricky Craven, the current Fox NASCAR Race Hub/Race Hub analyst. He's been on TV for 14 years, began back in 2005, 2006 with ESPN. He announced yesterday on Facebook that he will be retiring from TV, or basically from NASCAR as a whole, at the end of the 2020 season. He said in a Facebook post, and look, I love Ricky, but there were a lot, and I mean, for my standards, a lot of issues with it, like grammar or just punctuation. So I had to like chop it down to make it make sense. Sorry, Ricky, but here's a statement from him on his Facebook page, and he says, quote, "I've not been in a race car since 2005, yet I've enjoyed 14 years of TV as a NASCAR analyst since hanging up my helmet. There are people more qualified to commentate in today's NASCAR world than the 1995 Rookie of the Year and winner in each of NASCAR's top 3 divisions. Kenny Wallace and I have been good friends for roughly 30 years. Kenny retired because it was time. I'm retiring at the end of 2020 because it's my time." Now, that's not all he said in his Facebook post. In the second paragraph, he also talked about a story that he had with him and Kyle Larson. So last year, throwback weekend, Kyle Larson threw back to the 1995-96, I think it was 95-96 Kodiak paint scheme that Ricky Craven drove in the 41 car. And so Chip Ganassi flew out him and his son, Ricky Craven's son, out to Darlington to meet with Larson and to just be in with the throwback festivities. And during qualifying, Craven and his son were on the grid, and Larson came by. And it's, according to Craven, it seemed as though if Larson didn't even acknowledge them, and they didn't, like, he didn't even think about the car he was driving, didn't think about the people that was going, you know, didn't think about the situation at hand, everything, the magnitude of the situation regarding with the throwback car with Ricky Craven there, as if he didn't care about it. And this really, this story opens up about what Kyle Larson's personality is like. To me, from what I've seen, it seems as though he never thinks of what he says. Because remember, this is not the first time he has not done well in social interactions. You look back what happened 1 or 2 years ago with the Chili Bowl and Daytona 500 situation. Even last year, later in the year during the NFL season starts, when a Twitter post said, who's your favorite team? And Larson responded to that saying, anyone that stands for the flag or stands during the anthem. It's little things like that. It's like, don't think you need to say that. Because, again, like what Bubba Wallace said during that Twitter post, you as an athlete, professional athlete, you are held to a higher pedestal and you're under a microscope. And everything that you say or do is going to be judged and is going to be reflected on the brands on your fire suit. So Larson, to me, he does not know anything about the phrase of think before you speak or think before you tweet. He also, I don't think, is good with social interactions. With that conversation with Ricky Craven, for him to not acknowledge him or his son about the scheme that he's running. And is overall, in my opinion, just very selfish. That, you know, he only thinks about himself, doesn't really think about others. And as sad as that may be, but I hope that it has to take to this incident for him to maybe it finally clicks in his head that, hey, I really need to change. But hopefully he realizes that, and that him taking this time to sort of think back and really just understand the grasp of what's going on, and to understand he really needs to reevaluate how he thinks and how he speaks. Hopefully he comes back in this situation as a much better person. But that is it for Kyle Larson. Now it's on to move into some lighter news. And now let's move on from discussing the future of Larson to now the future of NASCAR in the 2020 NASCAR Cup Series season, currently on hiatus due to the pandemic that we all know, but we can't say for some reason. NASCAR said that they're going to start start looking around 4 to 5 weeks of racing without any fans, according to state/local guidelines, sources say. NASCAR is also talking with people at North Carolina, or the representatives of North Carolina, the high up, I don't know what they're called, but North Carolina officials, there you go, that's the right word, to discuss on trying to get people or their drivers or their members back to work at their shops, because North Carolina is on lockdown. And when you're on lockdown, that means you can't go to your shop. And when you can't go to your shop, it means you can't build cars. And you can't build cars, you can't go race. Simple as that. So NASCAR is working with the North Carolina officials to sort of get, release the restrictions a little bit. You know, like, hey, let them do their job. Like, let them get back to work. And NASCAR has been trying hard to do that and trying to get it done as fast as possible, because it was just announced 1 or 2 days ago that NASCAR has postponed the Martinsville race scheduled for May 8th and May 9th. They said in a statement here that NASCAR is postponing the scheduled events on May 8th/9th at Martinsville Speedway. Our intention remains to run all 36 races with a potential return to racing without fans in attendance in May at a date and location to be determined. The health and safety of our competitors, employees, fans, and the communities in which we run continues to be our top priority. We will continue to consult with health experts and local, state, and federal officials as we assess the future scheduling options. Now, what is interesting about this situation is while NASCAR is working with North Carolina officials, NASCAR apparently, they already have the green light to go racing. And my home state of Florida, yes. Here come the coming jokes of how Florida is a different breed, and to be honest, I don't blame you. But anyways, in all seriousness, Governor DeSantis, the governor of Florida, he has noted his support for holding televised sporting events without fans in the near future. This is a quote from, or at least a piece from jski.com, and it says, quote, that DeSantis also noted his support for holding televised sporting events in empty stadiums in Florida, pointing to a discussion with NASCAR Vice Chair Lisa Kennedy, who was among a list of sports commissioners and team owners named in Trump's advisory committee. He said, quote, I mentioned NASCAR. I talked to Lisa Kennedy. I want them to race, DeSantis said. I think the public will like to see. It's going to be on TV. I understand you're not going to fill up Daytona Speedway right now. I'm not suggesting you do. But I think if there's content that can be created, I think that that's a good thing. Even Dr. Fauci said, televised sports is a positive thing. Now, a tweet came out earlier today from Andy Slater, and it says that NASCAR's return and Homestead gets the green light from the city mayor. And it shows a snippet of an article from the city of Homestead, and that says that we would welcome the opportunity to be the host community for the first race, with or without fans. The event will send a strong signal that things are better, and reopening the NASCAR season here will be very symbolic of recovery, as the track was envisioned for Homestead as one of the first anchors for our recovery from Hurricane Andrew. Okay, so, thoughts on this? Well, I do think that we need to get back going. We can't literally just be on lockdown forever and wait till we get a vaccine. You know, that's, the economy's just gonna be destroyed. So I do think that we do need to get some things going. We need to get back rolling. I'm very interested though in how this is going to be handled. So let's say NASCAR is able to get back or to contact North Carolina, and teams are able to get back to work. Very interested to see how this process is going to happen going from North Carolina to Homestead, Florida, because they're gonna have to be like in a bubble. Like they're not like all the crew members, all the officials, all the drivers, even on the TV partners with Fox, more than likely is gonna broadcast this thing. It can get going in the coming weeks. They're all gonna be in like a bubble. Make sure they do not touch anybody, get near anybody. If this happens, I will be very excited, obviously, just to get some real racing back going. And I think it's good that NASCAR is pushing just to try and get back to racing. Whether it's, if it's one race at Homestead and then a month or two later from another race, at least get back to things going. Get back to normal somewhat, or to a new normal, I guess, in this new world with this pandemic going on. Because honestly, I'm really skeptical on NASCAR is able to get 36 races in. You saw there in the second sentence of their statement regarding the postponement of Martinsville, they want all 36 races. My guess is, let's say they don't get Homestead in time. The plan more than likely is to restart the season with the Coke 600. If they don't get started by May, it's gonna be very sketchy in order to get all 36 races in, because then you're gonna start getting into December, and if it gets pushed back to even, let's say, mid-June, you might go into January. Understand that if the season gets into January, then the Daytona 500 is gonna be 1 month away. Teams are gonna have to prepare cars not only for this season, but they're also gonna be preparing cars for next season. And it's I don't know. I think it's gonna be too much on the team at the shop in order to get these cars ready. If it goes into December, January, because you then also start prepping for the Daytona 500, which takes months of preparation in order to get that car ready to be as pristine and as perfect it can be. So, I hope that we can get all 36 races in, but the more and more this virus just pushes it back, the less likely I see this happening. I want to make a video on regarding the whole scope of the situation at hand with NASCAR and this pandemic that's going on, and what I think could happen. Because I'm just saying that I don't think it's gonna happen, but I really want to get right into as to the reasons why and what trends are saying, all that stuff in a future video. But yeah, it's gonna be very, very, very difficult, I think, for NASCAR to get all 36 races in. Even if we get back to racing in June. I just don't know how that's going to happen. And finally, we end this episode off with our last story, and it revolves around Drunken Brian France. You know about this story. We talked about it in an earlier episode of Inside Lines, on how the former CEO of NASCAR, Brian France, was suing the parody account Drunken Brian France for, I guess it was defamation of character, I think it was, or people assuming that it was actually him, which, again, if you really think that's actually him, you're an idiot. Well, today he announced at 8:09 a.m. on April 18th, the Drunken Brian France Twitter account posted this in a statement. It says that, quote, Brian France was not and never has been associated, affiliated, or in any way involved with his Twitter account or any of the content generated and/or posted by him. I will be permanently deactivating and deleting this account. I understand this account harmed Brian France and his family in ways never intended, and for that, I am sorry. And this sucks. Not only for this case, because he shouldn't have to do this. It's a parody account. It should be fine. But this also affects future parody accounts. Because if this situation will tell other people that have parody accounts mocking them, hey, if Brian France can get this guy's account shut down, that I can go over and sue someone and get their account shut down. And that's completely not fair. This is about freedom of speech, alright? First Amendment. Drunken Brian France, or whoever is in charge of the account, has the right to do that. Everyone knows it's not him. He has the right to express what he feels about this guy, about Brian France. And all the other parody accounts that mock other celebrities or other high executives or whoever it may be, they have the right. You can't just go out and take down people's accounts because you might not like what they're saying about you. They have the right to. And I know he doesn't say exactly that Brian France forced him, but more than likely, it's like, hey, take it down. It's like they might not have forced him, but maybe came to an agreement. Or else, high repercussions could have been made in terms of costs for, this lawsuit and everything that's going on. So it does suck. It does suck that whoever's in charge of that account has to shut it down, because he should not have to. All right, he has the right freedom of speech and the First Amendment, he has the right to post that. Post whatever he wants. He has that right. And him being forced, quote unquote, to shut it down it's just not fair. And this is another reason why I am glad Brian France is no longer with the sport of NASCAR. God, I hate him. But that's going to conclude this episode of Inside the Lines, ladies and gentlemen. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe for more content. Tell me in the comment section down below what are your guys' thoughts on any of the stories I talked about in this video. But until next time, my name is Jake Cross from NASCAR on MDK. And I'll see you guys in the next video.